Every morning, millions wake up at 5 a.m., grind, repeat, and call it power. But Machiavelli would laugh because nothing is easier to control than a man who thinks discipline makes him free. He's efficient, yes, but mechanical, trained, obedient, a pawn who thinks he's a king. The truth, discipline isn't strength, it's domestication. And the people praising your consistency are the ones who own you. They told you discipline is the key to success. That if you just wake up early enough, work hard enough, repeat the same habits long enough, you'll win. You'll rise, you'll conquer. But here's the truth no one dares to say out loud. Discipline doesn't make you powerful. It makes you predictable. And predictable men are easy to control. Think about it. A disciplined man wakes at 5 a.m., eats the same food, follows the same plan, obeys the same rules. He becomes efficient, yes, but also mechanical. He moves on command, like a soldier who never questions why the war is being fought in the first place. Machiavelli would have smiled at such a man, not out of admiration, but amusement. Because to a strategist, the disciplined man is a pawn who thinks he's a king. He polices himself so others don't have to. He chains his own mind and calls it virtue. You see, discipline isn't freedom, it's domestication. It's the psychological grooming of the ambitious to keep them inside invisible fences. Society doesn't want thinkers, it wants producers. Men and women who repeat the same loop until they die, quietly believing they did the right thing. Wake, work, sleep, repeat. And when you finally burn out, they'll say, he was so disciplined, such a hard worker. They'll say it like an epitaph because that's what it is. Here's the thing, true power doesn't live in rigidity. It lives in adaptability. Machiavelli never praised the man who followed the same code every day. He praised the one who could read the winds of fortune, bend his nature to the moment, and act with calculated flexibility. The man who tries to be good all the time will come to ruin among the many who are not good, he wrote. And the same applies to discipline. The man who tries to be disciplined all the time will break among the chaos of those who are not. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a river. The disciplined man is the dam, strong, structured, and unmoving. The opportunist, the strategist, the Machiavellian mind, he is the water. He flows, he shifts, he moves through cracks, finds paths unseen, carves new roads through stone. When the storm comes, the dam collapses. The water survives because rigidity is fragile. Adaptation is immortal. But this truth is dangerous because if people truly understood it, they'd stop being controllable. They'd stop worshiping discipline as the highest virtue and start cultivating something much more volatile, self-command. Self-command is not about repetition, it's about awareness. It's the ability to see your impulses, your patterns, your so-called discipline, and decide coldly, consciously whether to obey them or not. That's what separates the ruler from the ruled. The ruler uses discipline as a weapon, the ruled becomes a slave to it. Here's what I mean. A ruler may wake early one day and sleep till noon the next. Not because he's lazy, but because he decides when to act and when not to. His discipline is strategic, not habitual. He can fast for a week or indulge like a king because both are tools to him. Nothing owns him, not desire, not comfort, not routine. The disciplined man cannot say the same. He's trapped by his own consistency. His strength becomes his cage. You might think, but without discipline, wouldn't chaos take over? Only if you lack vision. Because vision, true vision, is the only force that deserves your obedience. Discipline without vision is slavery. But vision without discipline is chaos. Machiavelli understood that power requires a balance, the cold mind of order and the wild heart of opportunism. The ability to dance between control and chaos, never too rigid to bend, never too soft to break. Most people choose one side. The disciplined become predictable, the chaotic, self-destructive, but the strategist learns to wear both masks. And here's the tragedy. Society doesn't reward that kind of mind. It fears it, because you can't manipulate someone who moves according to their own rhythm. You can't sell them routines, courses, or ideologies. They don't need a guide, they are the guide. So the world keeps praising discipline as if it's sacred, as if becoming a machine is noble, as if routine equals wisdom. But that's not wisdom, it's obedience disguised as virtue. The true Machiavellian never worships consistency, he worships results. He studies outcomes, not appearances. He knows that discipline may help the weak rise, but it limits the strong from flying, because every system built to make you productive is also built to make you harmless. You wake up on time, do your tasks, hit your gym session, meditate, and think you've conquered yourself. But in reality, you've been domesticated into a pattern that no longer serves you, it serves the system. Look closely at the world's most powerful men. They're not disciplined in the way motivational books describe. They're erratic, unpredictable, obsessive when it matters, detached when it doesn't. They break rules, rewrite them, and move on. They're not balanced, they're effective. Because balance doesn't create empires, strategy does. Machiavelli knew that power doesn't belong to the consistent, it belongs to the cunning. The one who can act with relentless focus one moment and ruthless flexibility the next. He knew that being too disciplined makes you visible. People can read your moves, predict your reactions, use your habits against you. You become a machine with a user manual. And in the game of power, predictability is suicide. Here's what most don't understand. The disciplined man spends his life mastering control, while the powerful man spends his mastering perception. One controls himself, the other controls reality. The disciplined man builds order, the powerful man bends it. Now ask yourself, what's the point of mastering your habits if you can't master your circumstances? What good is control if it only keeps you caged within the same routine? You wake up at dawn, grind for 12 hours, check every box and feel accomplished. But your life doesn't change. Your environment doesn't shift. You're disciplined but stuck. Why? Because discipline creates tunnel vision. It trains you to repeat, not to reinvent. It's a system optimized for consistency, not evolution. In evolution, true transformation requires rebellion. Every leap in power, every revolution, every metamorphosis begins with the courage to break your own order, to destroy the habits that once made you strong because they've now made you slow. The disciplined man fears that. The strategist expects it. He knows that the moment a structure stops serving him, he must dismantle it without hesitation, because attachment is death, even to your own discipline. That's why Machiavelli said a prince must learn how not to be good, not because he admired evil, but because he understood that the highest form of intelligence is flexibility, the ability to shift your morality, your habits, your strategies depending on the moment, to be the lion when strength is needed, and the fox when cunning is required, to be disciplined when it serves your power, and mercilessly undisciplined when it doesn't. That's what separates a man who follows systems from a man who creates them. One obeys the map, the other redraws it. The disciplined man obeys the map, the other redraws it. And here's where most people get it twisted. They think breaking discipline means chaos, laziness, self-destruction. But that's only true when you've never learned self-command, because without command, freedom collapses into indulgence. But with it, freedom becomes precision. Machiavelli's mind wasn't wild, it was sharpened chaos. Controlled unpredictability. He could appear humble when it gained him favor, cruel when it established fear, patient when waiting was strategic, impulsive when action would shock his enemies into confusion. Every move was deliberate, every inconsistency designed. That's the level you must reach. Not discipline, but dominion. The dominion over yourself so complete that you can shift form without losing direction. To outsiders, you seem contradictory. To you, it's all one plan. Think about nature. The forest doesn't apologize for burning itself to the ground in order to grow again. The snake doesn't cling to its old skin. The seasons don't ask for permission to change. Everything alive is ruthless in its renewal. But humans, they cling to the image of discipline because it gives them identity. It makes them feel stable, respectable, virtuous. They don't realize that what they call discipline is just fear dressed as order. Fear of uncertainty, fear of losing control, fear of confronting the uncomfortable truth that they're meant to evolve, not repeat. So they choose the comfort of the known over the power of the possible. They trade instinct for instruction, fire for form, hunger for habit. And slowly they turn into machines, highly functional, deeply forgettable machines. But here's the thing. Every man who's ever changed the world, every ruler, thinker, conqueror, reached a point where discipline became too small for them. They outgrew it. Discipline got them started, but instinct took them further. They stopped following the rules they once swore by. Because the moment you master discipline, your next challenge is to destroy it. Machiavelli would tell you this. Discipline is for the soldier. Cunning is for the prince. The soldier must be consistent, predictable, obedient. Prince must be everything the soldier is not, because the prince doesn't serve, he rules. And to rule, you must understand timing more than repetition. You must sense when to move and when to wait, when to attack and when to vanish, when to speak with kindness and when to let silence crush them. Discipline can't teach you that. Only intuition refined by strategy can. That's what separates the mechanical from the magnificent. The mechanical man can repeat greatness. The magnificent one can create it. But let's dig deeper. Why do people worship discipline so much? Because it gives the illusion of control in a chaotic world. It makes you feel safe. You think, if I just stay consistent, success will come. But the world doesn't reward consistency. It rewards leverage. And leverage belongs to those who can move when others freeze, adapt when others crumble, and reinvent when others repeat. That's the paradox of power. The moment you find a formula that works, you must prepare to abandon it. Because success is not a destination, it's a moving target. And discipline, if you're not careful, ties you to a fixed point in a changing landscape. Machiavelli's Italy was a land of shifting alliances, betrayal, and war. Princes rose and fell overnight. The ones who survived weren't the most moral, the most talented, or the most disciplined. They were the most adaptable. He saw how rigid men, honorable men, disciplined men were devoured by their own consistency. They couldn't pivot fast enough. Their habits made them slow. Their morality made them predictable. Their discipline made them doomed. And from that blood-soaked chessboard of history, he carved one lesson that echoes through time. Power belongs to those who can change shape without losing essence. That is the true art. To stay yourself while becoming anyone. To move through chaos without being consumed by it. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. This means you have to kill parts of yourself, constantly. The routines, the values, even the identities that once protected you, they must die. And that's not easy, because you built your life around those patterns. You took pride in your structure, your schedule, your habits. You thought they defined you, but they only define the version of you that got here, not the one that's meant to go further. So ask yourself, are you disciplined or are you trapped? Do you move with intention or out of fear of falling apart? Have you mastered your patterns or have your patterns mastered you? If you're brave enough to face those questions, you're already walking the path Machiavelli reserved for rulers. Because the masses live by habit, the rulers live by awareness. The masses chase certainty, the rulers play with it. The masses ask for instructions, the rulers write them. And what does that awareness look like? It looks like silence before a decision. It looks like hesitation, not from weakness, but from calculation. It looks like a man who can pause mid-action and ask, does this still serve me? And if not, cut it without flinching. That's what real strength looks like. Not the man who never breaks routine, but the one who can destroy his own routine when the situation demands it. Because if you can't break your own pattern, someone else will break it. And they'll do it on their terms, not yours. Understand this. Discipline is a leash. A beautiful, polished, respectable leash, but still a leash. And the world loves a well-behaved man. He's easy to measure, easy to predict, easy to replace. But the man who refuses to be defined by repetition, that man is dangerous because he's untethered, unreadable. He can play disciplined when it serves him, chaotic when it doesn't. He can outwork the workers, outthink the thinkers, and outweight the patient. Because he's not bound to one form, he's free. Machiavelli's world rewarded that kind of mind, and so does ours. The world may pretend to value morality, humility, and consistency, but it bows to results. It always has. People don't remember who followed the rules. They remember who rewrote them. And that's why you must treat discipline not as a religion, but as a tool. A weapon to be used, not worship. The key is to stay fluid, to never let the system turn you into one of its gears. To remember that your power lies not in what you do every day, but in your ability to decide what matters today. That's the silent power most people never touch. The authority to pivot without guilt. To leave behind what no longer serves you, to break your own commandments for a higher goal. That's the kind of ruthlessness Machiavelli respected, not cruelty for its own sake, but the willingness to sacrifice comfort for vision. Because real discipline isn't about forcing yourself into routine. It's about mastering the art of strategic inconsistency, knowing when to hold the line and when to vanish, when to be the storm and when to disappear behind the clouds. The disciplined man says, I will do this every day. The powerful man says, I will do whatever it takes. That single difference changes everything, because one serves his rule book. The other uses his rule book as firewood when winter comes. And that's what you must understand. The world doesn't punish the undisciplined, it punishes the unprepared. So prepare not by memorizing routines, but by mastering awareness. Train your instincts to read the moment, not just follow the plan. Because every plan dies on contact with reality. But awareness survives anything. And that's the truth Machiavelli saw centuries ago. In the arena of power, the most dangerous man is not the most consistent, it's the one who can become anything at any time and still remain himself. The most dangerous man is the one who can become anything at any time and still remain himself. That kind of power terrifies people. They call it arrogance. They call it ego. But what they're really saying is, I can't control you. Because once you break the illusion of discipline as a virtue, you break the spell of obedience that holds most of the world together. You become untamable, and society hates what it can't tame. They'll try to drag you back into order. They'll call you lazy for resting, reckless for experimenting, arrogant for refusing to explain yourself. But what they don't understand is that freedom always looks like rebellion to the imprisoned. You can see it in their eyes, that quiet fear when someone walks a path they don't recognize. Because deep down, they sense what it means, that everything they've built their life around, the routines, the systems, the 5-year plans, could collapse the moment they question them. And that's why they never will. They'd rather stay disciplined than awake. But let's tell the truth, discipline isn't hard. What's hard is awareness. What's hard is waking up every morning and having to choose consciously what matters today, instead of leaning on yesterday's pattern. That takes actual strength. That takes courage. The man of discipline hides behind structure. The man of awareness walks naked through uncertainty. He stands where nothing is promised and says, I'll decide. That's the kind of man who shapes history. Because here's what no one tells you, discipline is a shortcut to stability, not mastery. It keeps you functioning but not evolving. It turns your potential into a schedule. And once your schedule becomes your identity, you've stopped creating, you're just maintaining. Machiavelli knew that stagnation is death in disguise. He watched rulers lose their thrones because they clung to yesterday's method. They thought what worked once will work again. But the game changed. The players changed. The terrain changed. And while they repeated what used to work, someone else was watching, adapting, waiting. That's the cruel irony. Your greatest strength becomes your downfall the moment you stop questioning it. Discipline becomes delusion when it blinds you to the shifting ground beneath your feet. And that's why the Machiavellian mind never rests in habit. It rests in awareness. Builds structures only to dismantle them later. It uses discipline only to abandon it when it's no longer useful. Every act of order is temporary, a tool, not a temple. Because to worship your own system is to betray your own evolution. You see, people confuse consistency with integrity. But integrity doesn't mean staying the same. It means staying true to your purpose, even when the form must change. A man who clings to discipline at the cost of progress isn't moral, he's fearful. Discipline says, this is who I am. Power says, I'll become whoever I must. That difference decides who commands and who obeys. But here's what's interesting. Machiavelli didn't despise discipline, he just understood its place. He saw it as the servant, not the master. Because there are moments when discipline is vital, when you must grind, endure, and act without emotion. The problem is when it becomes a religion, when you start serving it instead of using it. He would say, use discipline as long as it builds your position. Abandon it the moment it limits your reach. Most people can't do that. They confuse letting go with giving up. But there's a difference between surrendering to chaos and surrendering to transformation. Chaos consumes you. Transformation remakes you. And to be remade, you must first be willing to dissolve, to lose the version of yourself that once felt safe. That's the step most never take. They reach a plateau and call it mastery. They become a disciplined person, a badge of honor that doubles as a cage. But mastery isn't about maintaining control. It's about wielding it. It's about knowing when to tighten and when to release. A master sculptor doesn't grip the chisel with the same force every time. He shifts, adjusts, feels. Discipline is only half the art, sensitivity is the other. And sensitivity to timing, to change, to people. That's where Machiavellian power is born. Because power is not rigid. It breathes. It bends. It hides behind smiles and silence. It wears masks. It adapts. That's why the disciplined man can never hold power for long. He's too easy to read. You can predict his reactions. You can provoke him. You can use his routine against him. The adaptable man, however, you never know what he'll do next. He can act loyal and betray you the next day. He can play weak while plotting victory. He can vanish for months, then return stronger than ever. You can't corner a man who doesn't move in straight lines. And here's where most people fail. They mistake control for power. They think being strict with themselves makes them strong. But control is just one flavor of fear. Fear of losing order, fear of chaos, fear of uncertainty. Power doesn't fear chaos, it uses it. It feeds on it. Look at nature again. The storm doesn't plan its path. The ocean doesn't apologize for its tides. The fire doesn't ask if it's burning too much. They are pure forces of transformation. They move as they must. Now imagine applying that kind of energy to your own life: deliberate chaos, strategic unpredictability, not recklessness, but freedom. The kind of freedom that makes every choice intentional because nothing is automatic. That's what it means to live consciously. That's what it means to be dangerous. Because a man who acts consciously is a man who cannot be owned. He may appear calm, patient, structured, but those are just masks. His true allegiance is not to routine but to purpose. He doesn't pray to discipline. He uses it like a blade, and when the blade dulls, he forges another. That's the principle Machiavelli lived by. Never get attached to the instrument of your success. Whether it's a rule, a habit, or a person, the moment it stops serving you, let it go. Sentiment is the luxury of the powerless. Most people live like servants to their own formula. They think loyalty to a routine is loyalty to themselves. But the truth is, every new level of life demands a new kind of self, and the old version must die. That's why the disciplined suffer silently. They know they've become prisoners of their own perfection. So if you want to rise, truly rise, you must be willing to shed the skin of discipline and step into something far more dangerous: awareness mixed with intent. The ability to act with precision, but without attachment. To commit without chaining yourself. This is the paradox Machiavelli would whisper to you. To be free, you must master obedience. But to stay powerful, you must learn when to disobey. The disciplined man obeys rules. The powerful man obeys results. And results don't care how you feel, how long you've practiced, or how well you followed the routine. They only bow to strategy. That's why the world will never understand men like Machiavelli, or men who think like him. Because most people are addicted to feeling right. The Machiavellian is addicted to being effective. He doesn't ask, is this consistent with my routine? He asks, does this get me closer to my aim? And that's why he always wins, because he's willing to do what the disciplined man won't: change the entire game mid-play. So if you feel yourself clinging to your rituals, your plans, your precious consistency, stop and ask, is this still power or just pride? Because the moment discipline turns into pride, it's no longer a virtue, it's vanity. The truth is, every powerful man eventually becomes a paradox: calm and violent, patient and impulsive, disciplined and reckless. Because power isn't a fixed trait, it's a state of alignment between will and reality, and that alignment changes daily. That's why the disciplined crumble when life shifts. They don't know how to adapt their form. But the Machiavellian flows through life like smoke through keyholes. He finds entry where others see walls. He listens when others shout. He pauses when others rush. He's not a man of routine, he's a man of rhythm. And rhythm means you don't move the same every day, you move in sync with what the moment demands. That's why discipline in its pure form is the enemy of genius. Because genius requires fluidity. It demands the courage to act irrationally when reason would trap you. It asks for madness at times, composure at others. Machiavelli understood this balance, the art of controlled madness. The fox and the lion in perfect proportion. Not one dominating the other, but both existing in quiet tension. And it's in that tension between chaos and control, instinct and intellect, that true power lies. It's in that tension between chaos and control, instinct and intellect, that true power lies. And the tragedy is, most people will never taste it. They'll spend their lives chasing balance, as if the goal of existence were to remain comfortable, stable, safe. But balance is a myth designed for those who fear greatness. Because greatness doesn't live in the middle, it lives at the edges. It's born in the swing between extremes, in the moments when you risk breaking to discover how far you can bend. The disciplined man never risks that. He stays neatly inside the lines, polishing his armor while the world passes him by. He's respected, sure, but never feared. Admired, but never remembered. Because history doesn't honor the consistent, it honors the impactful. Machiavelli saw that in every empire, every court, every kingdom. The men who rose weren't the ones who followed the code, they were the ones who rewrote it in their image. They weren't disciplined, they were possessed. Obsessed with movement, with adaptation, with power. They understood something simple yet terrifying. Discipline creates order, but power creates worlds. The disciplined man wants control. The powerful man wants creation. And creation requires destruction. You must be willing to shatter your own patterns, betray your old identities, and step into forms that scare even you. Because real transformation is not pretty, it's violent. It strips you of everything familiar, your comforts, your routines, your pride, until only will remains. That's where you find yourself, not in repetition, but in rebirth. Here's the thing no one teaches you. every disciplined act eventually becomes a prison. At first, it gives structure, then it gives limitations, then it gives death, because the same walls that once protected you become the same walls that trap you. And most people never notice. They decorate their cell and call it purpose. But the Machiavellian mind, the aware, evolving, cunning mind knows when to burn the prison down. It doesn't cling to its own creation. It uses them and discards them, moving on before the ashes cool. And yes, that makes such a man dangerous to others and to himself, because he's always walking the edge between order and collapse. But that's the only place where greatness breathes. That's where history is written by men who dare to lose their form in pursuit of something larger. Look back at your own life. Think of all the times you were certain of who you were, the routines you swore by, the goals that once felt eternal. How many of them still define you now? Most have faded. Some turned to dust. A few became irrelevant the moment you outgrew them. So why pretend permanence exists? Why pretend that staying the same is virtue, when even the stars you see in the night sky are dying as they shine? The world rewards those who can adapt faster than it changes, those who can destroy their own discipline before life forces them to. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said fortune favors the bold. He didn't mean reckless, he meant flexible. The ones who can read the storm and change sails before the others even notice the clouds. Fortune is not luck, it's timing, it's awareness, it's a movement, and movement requires freedom. You cannot move freely if you're chained to the idea of what a disciplined person should be. You cannot play the game if you're too busy proving you're playing it correctly. The world doesn't need correctness, it needs cunning. Discipline keeps you surviving, cunning makes you thrive. That's why you must stop worshiping effort and start worshiping awareness. Effort without awareness is wasted motion. It's a treadmill disguised as progress, and that's what most people call life. They mistake activity for advancement, routine for evolution. They do everything right and die wondering why nothing changed. You want power, then you must learn to step off the treadmill, to pause, observe, adjust, strike, to live strategically, not mechanically. Because life doesn't reward the disciplined, it rewards the decisive. When the world shifts, and it always does, the disciplined hesitate, waiting for permission to act differently. The decisive move instantly. That's why one survives in theory, while the other dominates in practice. And domination, real domination, isn't about control over others. It's control over yourself at the deepest level. The ability to shift your nature without losing your essence. To become whatever the moment requires, and then return to stillness like nothing happened. That's the art of power. That's the art of living like a strategist. To know when to play the humble servant and when to strike like a god. To know when silence will wound more than words. To know that discipline can build your foundation, but if you never leave it, it will become your grave. So what do? You use discipline as a launch pad. You master it. You squeeze every ounce of strength from it, and then, when it's no longer needed, you let it go. You evolve. You shift into awareness, instinct, presence. Because that's where the real transformation happens. In that space where your actions stop being automatic and start being chosen. Every breath, every word, every silence intentional. That's what it means to live consciously, to walk through life as the cause, not the effect. Machiavelli understood this truth long before psychology had a name for it. He watched human nature move in cycles of obedience and rebellion, strength and decay, order and chaos. And he realized, those who cling to order perish when chaos rises. Those who master both, they reign. So don't just train your mind to endure, train it to pivot. Train it to sense when a new form of power is calling. When your discipline starts feeling heavy, suffocating, that's not failure. That's the signal, the invitation to evolve. You're not here to be disciplined forever. You're here to use discipline as the hammer that shapes your will, and then to throw the hammer away once your will is unbreakable. Because after that point, you no longer need rules. You become the rule. You become the law of your own movement. That's what Machiavelli would whisper to you if he stood beside you now. Don't aim to be consistent. Aim to be inevitable. Consistency is repetition. Inevitability is destiny. And destiny belongs to those who can shape-shift without losing sight of their aim. Who can reinvent themselves endlessly while their core remains untouchable. So here's the challenge, not the motivational kind, but the existential one. Can you destroy the version of yourself that discipline built? Can you let go of the structure that once saved you, knowing it now restrains you? Can you trust yourself enough to walk without the crutch of habit? If you can, you'll stop being a man of discipline and start being a man of design. You'll no longer be defined by your schedule, but by your results. You'll no longer live in fear of failure, because failure will simply mean time to adapt. You'll start to move through life like water, quiet, shifting, relentless. You'll stop chasing control and start wielding it. You'll understand what Machiavelli meant when he said fortune is a woman, wild, chaotic, powerful, and that only the bold know how to master. Because fortune never yields to the disciplined, she yields to the daring, to those who act, not react, to those who lead, not follow, to those who can step beyond the comfort of routine and into the raw, trembling freedom of uncertainty. That's where life happens. That's where transformation begins. That's where the powerful are born, not in the perfection of order, but in the mastery of chaos. So remember this, being disciplined might make you good, but being adaptable will make you unstoppable. Because the disciplined man builds habits, the adaptable man builds empire. And when the storm comes, when the rules collapse, when the system fails, when the world demands a new kind of power, it won't be the most disciplined who rise. It will be the ones who can burn their own rulebook and write another in the ashes. That's how you survive. That's how you win. That's how you become untouchable. So stop trying to be disciplined. Be dangerous instead. Be unpredictable. Be alive. And like Machiavelli, learn the greatest secret of all, that power doesn't come from following the code. It comes from knowing when to break it.